With the TikTok ban bill signed into law, what happens next? Big rumors with Nintendo's next platform offering some big surprises. An annual gaming event canceled. Net neutrality has been restored. Apple preparing for a big iPad event. And Meta opens its OS to the world. The latest in technology, entertainment, and everything in between. I'm Jason Greenwald, and this is The Fresh Wire. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Fresh Wire, the one and only. It is April 28th, 2024. Let's jump in to one of the biggest topics that we have to get into right away. Last week I talked about in my episode right at the beginning that there was a possible ban bill for TikTok being put forward, and the House of Representatives in the US signed it, or rather voted on it, and it succeeded in a very bipartisan manner. Well, in the days that followed, the U.S. Senate went ahead and voted on it, and that overwhelmingly succeeded. And now President Joe Biden has signed it into law just a few days ago, starting the countdown for the company that owns TikTok, ByteDance, to either divest it or face a ban. It's a huge deal. And obviously, the bill itself that was signed forward wasn't just a ban bill, a possible ban bill for TikTok, but rather tens of billions of dollars for aid to foreign countries, including Israel and Ukraine. So, of course, it was a bit more incentivizing to sign it forward, but this is obviously a very huge deal. From what I remember reading, ByteDance will, at least plans to fight this into court, and they expect to prevail. I also read that the company itself has there were big reports saying that they were considering already to start selling off TikTok itself and were beginning plans, but they have since denounced that, saying that they have no plans to do that, at least to that capacity. So they have now 9 months to sort out some sort of deal, although if something is making progress, but it's hitting that 9 months, the president, whoever it is, could extend it another 3 months. So obviously a huge deal. It's a larger timeline than the previous bill that would have also ended up with a TikTok ban that the U.S. House of Representatives put forward previously. But this is 9 months to a year, and the clock has started. Very big deal. Now, it's also a big deal because as TikTok has now hit the clock on a possible ban, it looks like drone company DJI might be next. Lawmakers are weighing an FCC ban of DJI that could ground the company's drones entirely. If this is passed, the Countering CCP Drones Act, which CCP is Chinese Communist Party, would add DJI drones to the FCC's list of equipment covered by the Secure and Trusted Communications Networks Act of 2019, which bars communications equipment or services that, quote, pose a national security risk, unquote, from running on U.S. networks. Previously, this was used to prevent companies from using federal funding to purchase banned equipment, including Huawei, sorry if I said that wrong, and ZTE, as they're already on the list. Obviously a huge deal. And keeping in mind, it has some precedent with this company. In 2020, the U.S. Department of Commerce put DJI on its entity list, preventing U.S.-based companies from exporting technology to DJI. The U.S. Treasury later adding DJI to its Chinese military industrial complex list over reports that drones are used to surveil China's Muslim Uyghur minority, while the Department of Defense put DJI on a blacklist of its own back in 2022. So, obviously a huge deal. Very, very interesting. I have a gimbal made by DJI. The specific model, it's one of the newer models. The Osmo 5, I think. I have it in my hand. It's pretty cool. I haven't really used it much as I anticipated, but it definitely works, and it's pretty good. But obviously, it's not a drone, unlike some of the other models DJI sells. You know, the whole situation regarding being scared by what the Chinese government might do to U.S. citizens or anything like that. So this is all coming through, and obviously a big deal, and not really certain what would happen to people that own these devices by DJI. I would assume gimbals, I would hope they don't do anything with that. But with drones, it's uncertain. The House of Representatives could vote to move forward with the Countering CCP Drones Act in the next month or so, according to the New York Times. So definitely keeping my eye on that. Now on to some more interesting topics. Microsoft, a very small company that you may or may not know from a small thing or two that they've done, has now open sourced MS-DOS 4.00. So a bit of computing history now open to the world. Company teaming up with IBM to release source code from the 1988 OS release, a version known for it not being very popular, pretty buggy, and its development history being very, very complex. That part of its aspect being known more than the OS itself. Infamously, it was supposed to be what introduced multitasking capabilities, allowing software to run in the background, but it only ended up releasing through a few European PC OEMs and never as a standalone retail product. This is not that form of DOS 4.00. Microsoft's open source programs office saying, quote, it was quote, unable to find the full source code, unquote, for what was referred to as MT-DOS, or multitasking MS-DOS, when it went to look. So they released the source code for a other version of DOS 4.00, primarily developed by IBM to add more features to the existing non-multitasking version of DOS that ran on most IBM PCs and PC clones of the day. Remember, this was the late 80s, years before the big release of Windows 95 that would fundamentally change computing as we know it. Microsoft never returned to the idea of multitasking DOS, and it would become the pure view of graphical operating systems like Windows, while MS-DOS versions 5 and 6 continued with what you normally think of for DOS, a one app at a time model. Documentation and binary files for MT-DOS was also released, and, quote, may update this release if more is discovered, unquote. So if they end up looking for more, maybe they'll release more, which would be pretty cool. Now, this isn't uncommon. Microsoft has open sourced some other legacy code over the years, including older, understandably, MS-DOS versions, along with programs such as GW Basic from 1983, a very early version of Word for Windows, and the original Windows File Manager. Very, very good stuff that they're able to archive this sort of stuff and make it open source. It's, one of the good things about Microsoft every now and then, that they just come around. It's like, hey, we're not 100% evil. See? Now, a little bit more of context that Ars Technica pointed out. The release of the MS-DOS 4.0 code isn't the only new thing that DOS historians have gotten their hands on this year. One of the earliest known versions of 86-DOS that Microsoft would end up buying and turning into the OS for the original IBM PC was discovered and uploaded to the Internet Archive back in January. An early version of the abandoned Microsoft-developed version of OS/2 was also unearthed in March. Now, one big thing, by the way, that I feel like I forgot to mention, MS-DOS 4.0, one of the big problems with it was how RAM hungry it was. Keeping in mind, this was the version that Microsoft was hoping to turn into multitasking capability, but were unable to do so. So this release would consume as much as, wait for it, 92 kilobytes of RAM. Yeah, that's a lot. In 1988, the previous version of MS-DOS 3.31 used around 56. And the version following 4.00, so 4.01, reduced it to 86. Now, this was very obviously a problem because later versions actually went even lower to 72 or 73 kilobits, and even IBM's PC-DOS 2000, which I can assume is a later version of DOS itself, only needed 64 kilobytes. So a little fun fact for you. This is a big deal. Big rumors involving Nintendo's next big thing are starting to come into fruition. I've talked about it in previous episodes. The report that it might release in 2024, then it said, it's actually going to be 2025. All the technology it might support, like deep learning, super sampling from NVIDIA, which would improve graphical capability. Keep in mind, the Nintendo Switch, in its current form, released back in March 2017. March 2017. Since then, there has been a mid-generation release for the Xbox One. Then we've had the PS5 and the Xbox Series X and Series S home consoles. And now we have since had a slimmer revision of the PS5 release. And after all this time, the main option for $300 from March 2017 to now has been the Nintendo Switch. $300. It has not even gone down in price. So a lot is on the line for whatever Nintendo does with their next platform. And reportedly, one big change with the Switch 2, whatever it may end up being called, is it will replace the slide-in Joy-Cons with a magnetic attachment, possibly changing things in expectations for current Joy-Con compatibility. This is according to a report from the Spanish-language gaming news site Vandal. The site noting the new design could make direct Switch 2 backward compatibility with existing Switch Joy-Cons difficult. Now, of course, there's always the possibility that an optional magnetic shim could make older Joy-Cons attachable. And current Switch Pro controllers that don't physically attach to the Switch is expected to be fully compatible with this new platform, according to the report. Vandal citing several unnamed accessory and peripheral makers reportedly getting to touch the new console inside of an opaque box, which was used to balance design secrecy with the need to provide general knowledge of the unit's dimensions. According to the sources, Switch 2 will be, quote, larger than the Switch, although without reaching the size of the Steam Deck, unquote. I will say, the Switch, compared to the Valve Steam Deck, which is another gaming handheld, but a bit more premium, is noticeably larger, but noticeably more capable as well. Now, a little bit of context on this site's reputation. In 2021, Vandal accurately reported some early details of the Switch OLED design shortly before the upgraded console's launch. So this gives some credence, some reputability with this big release, this big report. And I don't know. Now, regarding software, Nintendo has only offered fake answers on whether the upcoming Switch 2 or whatever it is will be compatible with the thousands of games designed for the current Switch generation. So backwards compatibility, which is now a huge topic on both Sony and Microsoft, although Microsoft is doing a phenomenal job with that, hands down, it's unknown if Nintendo would follow through with it. Because backwards compatibility and Nintendo previously used to be best buds and then completely killed it off entirely with the Switch, unless you have their annual or online subscription, and then you get to play older games that, whether or not you owned, makes no difference. Some reports suggest, however, that developers are already testing this kind of backwards compatibility on Nintendo's upcoming hardware. Back in February, numerous reports suggested Nintendo was targeting an early next year launch for this new platform to give developers more time to create a strong software launch for the platform. Earlier reports suggested the hybrid console would sport a larger 8-inch screen and could support the new and improved upscaling that newer NVIDIA GPUs support, DLSS, on Ampere-based NVIDIA processors. So it will be close to, if not the latest and greatest, which is fantastic. It was a missed opportunity that the current Switch could have utilized just barely brand new latest and greatest hardware, but Nintendo decided against it and used hardware that was already close to 2 years old. Now, luckily, the Switch in some games still hold up, but it's really getting long in the tooth. 2017 and its mobile-based hardware, you can only do so much with what they're providing to developers, which is why a lot of titles are just not coming to Switch anymore. Keep in mind, Mortal Kombat 1, one of the biggest examples, looks actually really good if you play it on a modern platform like the PlayStation 5, but if you play it on the Nintendo Switch, which I think still costs $70, it actually looks horrific. So it's just a big problem. What's not a problem? The next topic. I mentioned before that video game emulators are now all over the Apple App Store because Apple has finally made it allowed. Well, now it's spreading beyond iPhones, and it's starting to go to iPad. The Delta emulator will be able to turn your iPad into a massive Nintendo DS. The developer Riley Testud says an iPad-specific version is, quote, near completion, unquote, and will be released with Delta version 1.6. The app already available for Patreon supporters through, quote, the regular alt store, unquote, which probably means the non-EU specific one that you can get through, I wouldn't say jailbreaking, but through accessible means, and not the Apple-approved alt store PAL, which is only in the EU and I think costs a fee to actually join. Now, keep in mind, this already works on the iPad and even the Vision Pro, but a native version would allow it to take up the full iPad screen real estate for better skins, including one that could turn your tablet into a massive Nintendo DS Lite. Apparently, it would also support iPad View, which is pretty cool. After releasing this iPad OS native version, Tesla says he will turn to bringing, quote, device-to-device multiplayer, unquote, to the app. So that could be a pretty big deal. And if it supports over the internet, it'd be actually make it one of the greatest video game emulators you can get on your phone, or rather handheld mobile device. I do wish something like this more so existed for Android, though. It'd be pretty great. Now, a little bit of a bad news situation for video gamers, including myself, especially ones that love World of Warcraft, Diablo, and Overwatch. If you love Overwatch, I'm sorry. BlizzCon, which is hosted usually annually by video game publisher Blizzard, they've announced it will not happen this year, saying, quote, after careful consideration over the last year, we at Blizzard have made the decision not to hold BlizzCon in 2024, unquote. Blizzard saying instead of the annual event that they usually hype up for months to have a massive amount of new reveals, new releases, new gameplay, the ability for developers to talk one-on-one to fans, Blizzard says it will hold other smaller events throughout the year, mentioning participating in other trade shows such as Gamescom, which means it's going to be more developer-focused. Additionally, 2024 marking the 20th anniversary of World of Warcraft, the game that really put Blizzard on the map, if it wasn't already. Blizzard says it's planning, quote, multiple global in-person events, unquote, and will share updates for World of Warcraft's 10th expansion, The War Within, along with Diablo 4's first expansion, Vessel of Hatred. Now, Blizzard says even though this is a big cancellation for 2024, they do say the event will return in the future, saying, quote, while we're approaching this year differently and as we have explored different event formats in the past, rest assured that we are just as excited as ever to bring BlizzCon back in future years, unquote. Now, obviously, they're not really saying it's coming back next year. They're just in future years. So that's entirely possible. We might not see it next year either if what they're doing this year ends up being a larger success than maybe they anticipate. And by whatever they anticipate, they probably anticipate very low success because BlizzCon has usually been a massive gaming event that focused all in on Blizzard and its properties, and it's usually been a big deal, whether for better or worse. Now, this would have been the first BlizzCon to happen post being acquired by Microsoft. Remember that big ordeal, $68.7 billion. And, of course, you know, their CEO, Bobby Kotick, leaving after more than 30 years at the helm. Now, this isn't the first time it's been canceled. In 2020, the pandemic had it forced to be canceled for 2020, eventually returning in an online format. And in 2022, it was canceled after a large amount of state and federal workplace harassment lawsuits. It happened, I think, physically, the event, last year. And yeah, a huge cancellation, especially because E3 has finally, you know, entered the grave last year, and Microsoft laid off 1,900 employees earlier this year across Activision Blizzard and Xbox, one of the largest single video game industry layoff events of the last 2 years. So not a lot of great news, and this just added on to that. Very disappointing, but c'est la vie. Hope they do it next year, and whatever they do this year is going to be good. Now, another bad news for video games. If you have been on Valve's Steam platform for a while, you probably know of the game Garry's Mod, based off Valve's Source engine, where you could just do whatever the heck you want. Popular physics sandbox game. Well, on Wednesday, the developers have made a post on Steam that has rocked the world of people that have uploaded their own add-ons to Gary's Mod for the past 20 years, saying, quote, may have noticed that certain Nintendo-related workshop items have recently been taken down, ... This is not a mistake, unquote. Nintendo has been taking down or sending, I think, DMCA requests to remove Nintendo-based add-ons that are in Gary's Mod, and it's obviously a huge deal. 20 years of uploads, and they are now telling people if you can just remove your Nintendo-based content and never upload it again, that'd be great, at least to that degree. It's been happening earlier this year, but some users believe these requests were from a copyright troll rather than from Nintendo itself, including me. Even I thought, this is just ridiculous. Why now of all times? But unfortunately, Gary's Mod creator Gary Newman confirmed on x/Rare.com that he has been assured the takedown requests are, quote, legit. So this is obviously, devastating to the amount of add-ons that have existed for Gary's Mod for, as it said, around 20 years. A lot of Nintendo ones where you could be Mario or other characters, or Mario Kart maps or Super Mario 64 are all just gone, or where you could explore Hyrule as Link. So the developers, having just knowing all of this, and they don't want their game to be removed from the face of the earth, or having to just handle each one in such a legal process, every single one of them every time, they're asking the community to remove them and to never upload them again. Now, I would hope that they are uploaded somewhere else for preservation. I'm not for infringing copyright. That's illegal. I have to be completely against that for legality's sake. But a lot of content just existed for so long that was Nintendo-based that for all to just disappear would be very, very disappointing, on top of everything else Nintendo's done. For example, the removal of the Dolphin emulator that allows you to emulate Nintendo GameCube and Wii titles on your computer. That was removed from Steam last year. And as I mentioned in an earlier episode, the $2.4 million lawsuit against the developers of the Nintendo Switch emulator Yuzu, and which was so devastating and so expensive, other emulators were shut down over fear of legal action from Nintendo. So they've been on a ball, admittedly, on really disappointing people. Yeah, very, no other way for me to put it. I think every time I say it's just disappointing for Nintendo, but they're never going to change, and there's nothing people can do. They make fantastic games, and any sort of boycott is just going to be irrelevant, which is disappointing. And even boycotts, I think, in the case of Nintendo, are just never going to matter enough to the point where they would actually do something about it. Again, I have to say, c'est la vie, and move forward. And luckily, one agency is moving forward in something that actually is pro-consumer. Based on my first episode's ever title, it's finally some pro-consumer moves, and the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, just did exactly that. They voted 3-2 to restore net neutrality rules that would ban blocking and throttling. So this is this is great. This is going to restore the common carrier regulatory framework enforced during President Barack Obama's administration, which was abandoned during President Donald Trump's administration. The new rules prohibiting internet service providers from blocking and throttling lawful content and banning paid prioritization. So, yeah, this is a huge deal. Now, the reason why this may have taken so long for some people is, as far as I know, the FCC, they voted on this on a party line vote. 3 Democrats supported it, 2 Republicans opposed it. Now, for a very long time, the FCC did not have that 3rd Democrat due to some wishy-washy situation with actually getting someone voted forward by the U.S. Senate. I'm very political, so I won't get into it. But eventually someone was finally put forward, voted on, succeeded, and they've put forward a lot of new changes by the FCC, and this is probably the biggest one they've done yet, if not one of the biggest. And yeah, it's this is a huge deal, especially because of the fear that, that this net neutrality, if it wasn't going to be reversed, or rather restored, this sort of paid prioritization, I think it was so controversial. I'm not sure if any carriers in the US actually put that forward, but I do remember some countries that didn't have these sort of rules put in place that actually did put that forward, where if you didn't pay, I think, an extra amount of money a month, your YouTube access would be slowed or something, and that was always allowed. It's just so extremely unpopular that I don't know if any ISP, internet service provider, actually put forward with it, mainly because of how unpopular it was. But the thing with the US is so much of the country has a monopoly or duopoly on internet service providers. So if your only option is Comcast or Xfinity, well, they can screw you over however they like and charge extreme prices, and you can't do anything about it. Or if AT&T is your only option, you can't do anything about it. So this being restored is a huge deal. Now, of course, lobbying groups by broadband companies are preparing a lawsuit calling the rules a, quote, net fatality, unquote, which, again, I'm not going to get political, but this was put forward, and it was even upheld in court, apparently. So I fully anticipate that this will be upheld in court, but of course, this is going to be a big push, and I'm very excited for the fact that this is back. I'm very thankful. Now, a little bit of a update, a little bit of a warning I gotta give. If you have game captures using your Xbox One or your Xbox Series console, it's time to back them up. Microsoft has started reminding Xbox owners it will start deleting game captures from its Xbox network after 90 days, starting May 30th. If you don't want to lose these game clips and screenshots, you'll have to back them up, any old ones, to OneDrive or an external drive over the next month. Again, if you were reminded, make sure to do so as soon as possible. I may or may not have some that I don't even realize are not backed up from my Xbox One X, backed up to this Xbox network, so I'll probably have to check it out. I haven't turned it on in a very long time because I have not renewed my Game Pass Ultimate or Xbox Live Gold. I don't use my Xbox One anymore. Still functional. I turned it on, I think, about a month ago. It had a million updates. I just installed them all, and it ran, well, slow, which is what I expected. It's the Xbox One X as well, so it's probably on its last few legs. I wish the hard drive was replaceable. Unfortunately, Microsoft decided for that to not be replaceable, even though they are the makers of Windows, where, you can build a computer. Meanwhile, with the PlayStation, it seems like it's always been an option where you could swap out the storage internally. Now you can't with the PS5, but you can add your own storage, whatever you like, as long as it's supported. So that's cool, at least. Can't really do that as much with the Xbox One, but the Xbox Series consoles, you can add proprietary storage. It's a whole problem. Now, a little bit of an Apple segment, and it's a big one. Apple finally teasing and announcing that it will host a spring event May 7th in the morning. Now, it's not certain what's going to be announced, but all eyes are on the fact that it's very likely to be new iPads, specifically iPad Pros that utilize new OLED screen technology, as it's been rumored about for months, and also the chance of a new iPad Air, and for the first time in 2 sizes. Other rumors also indicating a new Apple Pencil and updated Magic Keyboard accessories, and unfortunately, the rumors don't indicate an update to its general entry-level iPad or the iPad Mini. So the big deal with iPad Pro seems to be the one. And of course, as I said, a larger iPad Air. So Vlad will go on with that. Now, a little bit of VR. And as I said, a big iPad segment. So it's going back to iPad, or rather Apple, sorry. And it involves a bit of a disappointing update, but something that is disappointing yet unsurprising at all. Apple reportedly cutting production for its Apple Vision Pro headset due to low demand. An analyst saying Apple is slashing shipments for 2024 and rethinking plans for its next model. From what I read, it's likely that their hope for pushing forward a lower cost entry mixed reality headset in 2025 seems to be out the window, and now it just at all. Apple says, according to sources, to sell only around 400 to 450,000 units this year, compared to the market consensus of 700 to 800,000. Now, of course, this being a $3,500 headset, and now I think on eBay auctions are having this headset be sold for around $2,500, a massive discount for used models. Not entirely surprising. Again, the MetaQuest 3 for $500 is right there and does a lot of what the Apple Vision Pro accomplishes for $3,500. It was never a great idea. But that's just my opinion, and if you have your own opinion, you can do whatever you like with it. Now, one last thing about VR, and it's actually a huge deal. Meta recently opening up its operating system for Meta Horizon OS, and that includes some big partnerships, including a limited edition MetaQuest VR headset that's, quote, inspired by Xbox, unquote. Details beyond this weren't really revealed, but it's likely to be a skinned MetaQuest 3 that could include an Xbox controller, maybe instead of regular VR MetaQuest controllers, like the ones that go around your hand. That's a pretty big deal. Meta saying in the announcement, working together again to create a limited edition MetaQuest inspired by Xbox. So they also don't say if it's going to be the MetaQuest 3. I doubt it's going to be the MetaQuest Pro, but it could be a lighter model of the MetaQuest 3, or maybe just, MetaQuest Lite, or maybe even the 4 if this takes. In an Instagram post, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg saying the version of the headset that's being teased today comes out of the box with Xbox controllers and Game Pass, so you can immediately just start playing on a big screen anywhere you go. Now, Microsoft has had quite a history with VR. Previously, they've dabbled in VR headsets, and to a degree, the hope of pushing it forward with Xbox. Remember, a document leak in 2012 detailed plans for the Xbox One to utilize what was called Kinect glasses, but that didn't happen. And then rumors came that the Xbox One X was supposed to be VR capable, which would have made a lot of sense, especially because it was more capable than the PlayStation 4 Pro, which supported VR, and much more than the regular PS4 that supported VR. But that never came to be, even though at one point Xbox One controllers were shipped with the Oculus Rift. That was years and years ago. Microsoft then failing with its Windows mixed reality efforts, pivoting now toward partnering with Meta. Keeping in mind, this isn't the first time Meta has partnered with Microsoft. You've been able to use Word, Excel, and PowerPoint in VR, and Xbox Cloud Gaming reached VR headsets last. Can't wait to see what happens with this. Obviously, if it's close to the MetaQuest 3, I have no reason to buy it, but you never know. Now, on to futurology, and it's quite a bit of AI. First off, a cute little topic. Adobe, with their impressive AI upscaling, seems to be pushing forward, improving the quality of blurry videos. It's called Video GigaGAN and can improve video resolution by 8 times without introducing flicker or other visual distortions. From some examples shown, it does look pretty impressive, and it definitely smooths things out and really pushes AI to what I think is some of its limits, at least current limits. A Swan that looks like the video quality of what was sent over a 2G network maybe 15, 20 years ago, all of a sudden looks like, dare I say, DVD quality, if not better. Now, what is a GAN? Generative adversarial networks are effective for upscaling still images to a high resolution, but struggle to do so for videos without, as I mentioned, introducing flicker and other artifacts. But it looks like Adobe may have figured something out, and this up-close short video of human eye, or in the around part of it, had some pretty impressive texture, and will only bring in the question of what a photo really is. Now, on to videos. Now, it's only a research preview. No guarantee Adobe will offer this to consumers anytime soon, especially with software such as Premiere Pro. And they've previously previewed a separate diffusion-based upsampling experiment called Project Res Up during its Max event last year, similarly improving the quality of low-resolution GIFs, not GIFs, GIF, and video footage. Keeping in mind, Microsoft and NVIDIA have also developed their own upscaling technology of the sort. Oh, can't wait to see what comes out of that. Hopefully it's accessible to everyone. And lastly, a big report that came out, and it involves ChatGPT and the iPhone. Apple's reportedly holding discussions with OpenAI about using their AI technology to power some features coming to the iPhone later this year, according to a report by Bloomberg. Now, this comes not too long ago after reports, apparently, I must have missed this, surfaced that Apple is holding discussions with Google about using Gemini in iOS 18, which is expected to release later this year. Now, of course, a lot of this AI generation improvements and whatnot are expected to be shown off later this year, as Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference is just a few weeks away, I think usually in June. So new generative AI features for the iPhones are expected to be debuted in a big fashion. Bloomberg reporting Apple's holding discussions with both Google and OpenAI about these AI features. However, iOS 18 is also expected to include features created in-house by Apple. Although, as we've seen, Apple has not really shown a whole lot of AI butte, struggling to keep pace with the competition, and they have, as of this report, yet to make a final decision on which partner it will use. Now, I will say, if it is Google, that is a huge, huge partnership on a very unprecedented scale. Keep in mind, Apple has Siri, and it's just not great. I mean, I'm obviously biased. The only iOS device I own is an iPod Touch, so I can't say how great Siri is, if it was great, and how horrible it is, because it's a bias. But from what I've read, it's just not a great look for them. And, this is a big deal. I mean, any sort of Apple partnership, one way or another, could be huge for the iPhone. And I'll just have to wait and see. I mean, I'll stick with my Android, but it could be a game changer for people considering one or the other. Now, I was going to end it off here, but I wanted to end it off with a huge topic that only just came around in the past several hours. I planned these topics in advance. I didn't want to mix things around too much, but this is a huge deal. A huge Disney leak has come around, and it's big. A lot of pitch Bibles and unreleased pilots released online and are downloadable right now. Now, of course, copyright infringement not support doing any of that matter. If you want to do it, I cannot stop you. But there's also early looks at beloved shows from Disney, including Owl House and Gravity Falls. And I'm not sure how this leak even happened, but it's a big one. Over 20 pilots, including some of shows that were pitched and ultimately never went anywhere, and 40 show Bibles. Now, show Bibles are documents creators use to pitch their show, from the tone and characters to breakdowns for potential future seasons. So, yeah, these are pretty big ones. There's even pitch Bibles from very relatively old shows, including Super Monkey Team, Hyperforce Go, and American Dragon Jake Long. That's my childhood right there. For anyone that remembers watching Jetix, I'm right here. I am right here. And yeah, this is a big deal, including how some aspects of the shows were retooled and different character designs. It's a lot. If you want to get into it, you could find it. You could do your own research, as I always recommend. But it's a big one. I do plan to look through it myself, not to put myself out there, but I've seen some screenshots, and I got to see some of this. It's very intriguing, especially for someone like me that grew up watching a lot of these shows and then seeing some of these pilots that could have been, but never meant to be. And with that is the episode. Thank you all for tuning in. With that, the week is over. Tune in again next week for more of the latest and greatest. That'll be it for me. Take care of yourselves, and have a good morning, afternoon, evening, day or night, however you are, however you live.